Chosen one. You didn't say anything, yet the attack still came. You noticed it clearly. The moment you went quiet, someone became hostile. When you stopped explaining yourself, tension rose. When you chose silence over reaction, they escalated. Criticism, sarcasm, subtle jabs, meant to provoke you. Maybe it showed up like this. People talking about you instead of to you. Accusations you never got a chance to respond to. Pressure increasing the less you engaged. If that sounds familiar, this message will explain why silence triggered them and why your quiet was never weakness. In this message, you'll understand what your silence disrupted, why it was perceived as a threat, and how to move forward without breaking your peace. If any of this hit a nerve, stay with me. Because once you see what silence actually does in spiritual dynamics, you'll never doubt yourself again. It often starts subtly. A shift in tone. A strange coldness where there used to be familiarity. People reacting to you as if you've done something wrong, even though you've done nothing at all. You didn't confront them. You didn't accuse. You didn't withdraw dramatically. You simply became quiet. And somehow, that silence made things worse. In families, it looks like this. You stop defending yourself, and suddenly you're labeled distant or disrespectful. You stop absorbing tension, and you're accused of changing or acting different. At work, it shows up as scrutiny. Your words are replayed, your intentions questioned, your silence interpreted as defiance. In relationships, it can feel even sharper. You pause instead of arguing, and the other person escalates. They push, they provoke, they try to pull a reaction out of you. Emotionally, this leaves you confused. You feel misunderstood, unfairly targeted, almost punished for choosing restraint. And at some point, you start wondering if silence was a mistake. But here's the reframe. This wasn't random tension, and it wasn't about communication style. This was a power shift. In spiritual and psychological language, silence breaks unconscious agreements. Agreements where you were expected to explain, soothe, absorb, or regulate. When those agreements dissolve, systems react. Some traditions describe this reaction symbolically as controlling or monitoring energies becoming alert when influence is threatened. Psychology calls it the same thing, in different words. People losing access to your emotional labor. That's why the attacks felt disproportionate. That's why they came when you were calm, not confrontational. You weren't being punished for silence. You were being tested to see if you would return to the role that made others comfortable. But this isn't just about behavior. There's a deeper reason silence feels so dangerous to unhealthy systems, and that's what we need to uncover next. Inside you, silence was never emptiness. It was containment. You didn't go quiet because you were afraid. You went quiet because you were listening, tracking what was real and what was performance. You've always had this ability to sense when words would only feed chaos, to feel when engagement would give the wrong kind of power. So instead of reacting, you paused. You noticed patterns most people miss, how certain individuals only feel alive when there is friction, how some dynamics collapse without your emotional input. You carry a deep instinct for balance, for justice, for truth that doesn't need volume. But that instinct came at a cost. From early on, you learned that your calm unsettled people. Your stillness made them anxious. Your refusal to perform made them uncomfortable. So you adapted. You learned to soften your silence, to explain it, to justify it, to reassure others that your quiet wasn't rejection. And over time, that became exhausting. You think deeply. You reflect before speaking. You replay interactions not to punish yourself, but to understand intent. That depth is often misunderstood. People who operate through noise interpret silence as judgment. Those who rely on reaction feel exposed when it's withheld. In spiritual language, this sensitivity is sometimes described as an anointing, not a badge of superiority, but a responsibility to move with discernment. In psychology, it's the same pattern seen in those who had to become emotionally aware early in life to survive. Your silence is not avoidance, it's regulation. And regulation removes leverage. If you're still here, it's because a part of you already knows this is true. But there's another layer. What silence does on an energetic level to people who depend on access. And that's where we're going next. Here is the part most people never see. Silence doesn't just remove noise, it removes access. Unhealthy systems survive on feedback loops, reaction, explanation, emotional availability. When you were speaking, clarifying, defending, soothing, energy was circulating. Even conflict kept the system alive. But when you went silent, truly silent, the circuit broke. In spiritual language, this is why silence has always been feared, not because it is passive, but because it is sovereign. Silence doesn't argue, it doesn't negotiate, it doesn't leak information. And for personalities that rely on control, that is destabilizing. This is where symbolic language like monitoring spirits appears, not as entities floating around you, but as heightened vigilance when influence is slipping. People start watching instead of engaging, probing instead of connecting, sending indirect pressure instead of honest conversation. Flying monkeys appear. Messages arrive through third parties. Stories are told without your voice present. Why? Because silence removes the one thing manipulation needs most: predictability. Your silence forced others to face themselves, their projections, their assumptions, their need for dominance or reassurance, and instead of self-reflection, they chose attack. Not because you were wrong, but because your quiet exposed how dependent they were on your reaction. In spiritual terms, this is what happens when an old agreement dissolves. An agreement where you carried peace for everyone else. An agreement where your voice was used to stabilize dysfunction. Breaking that agreement feels like betrayal to those who benefited from it. So the attacks came, not to harm you, but to pull you back, to provoke explanation, to reestablish access, to make you speak again so the old balance could return. But silence, when chosen consciously, cannot be forced open. And once you understand this, the narrative shifts completely. You were never being punished for withdrawing. You were being resisted for stepping into authority. Understanding this reframes the past, but it doesn't complete the work, because insight without movement leaves you visible. And the next step is learning how to move differently, without giving your power away again. That's what we're about to walk through. Now this is where silence becomes strategy, not retreat. The first move is internal clarity. You need to name what your silence actually replaced, because it didn't come out of nowhere. Ask yourself honestly, what role did I stop playing? Where was I expected to explain, smooth over, or absorb tension? Who benefited most from my voice being available on demand? Don't dramatize it, just see it. This is how trauma bonds weaken, not through confrontation, but through recognition. The second move is energetic consistency. Silence only works when it is stable, not silent one day, reactive the next, not calm until provoked, then apologetic. Decide what access you are no longer offering: emotional reassurance, instant responses, over-explaining your choices. Then hold that line gently, but firmly. In spiritual language, this is where authority replaces effort. In psychological terms, it's where regulation replaces reactivity. The third move is external boundary. Without announcement. You don't need speeches. You don't need closure conversations. You simply move differently. You respond slower. You share less. You disengage from conversations that exist only to pull you back into old roles. If flying monkeys appear, you don't correct the story. You let inconsistency speak for itself. People who relied on your reactions will escalate first. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means the strategy is working. The fourth move is redirection of energy. Silence creates space. That space must be filled intentionally. Within the next 24 hours, take one small action that invests in your own direction. Something concrete, something visible to you, not to them. Begin the project. Block the time. Make the decision you've been postponing. This is how silence becomes movement. And finally, the fifth move is trust in the shift. Not everyone will understand this version of you. Some will feel abandoned by it. But clarity always feels threatening to those who thrived in confusion. You are not required to be understood to be aligned. And when silence is paired with direction, observation loses its grip. Because systems cannot control what is no longer available and no longer undecided. What happened to you wasn't a misunderstanding, and it wasn't immaturity on your part. It was a transition. The moment you chose silence, you stepped out of a system that depended on your reaction. The moment you stopped explaining, you stopped negotiating your worth. The moment you held your ground quietly, authority shifted. That's why the attacks came after you went quiet, not before. Silence didn't weaken you. It revealed who needed access to feel powerful. If you've lived inside a trauma bond, this is where it starts to loosen. If you've carried an anointing you didn't yet have language for, this is where it stabilizes. If you've been cast as the scapegoat in dynamics that required someone to absorb the tension, this is where the role ends. You were never meant to win by arguing. You were meant to win by becoming unavailable to distortion. This chapter of your life isn't about being louder. It's about being clearer. If this message resonated with you, don't brush it aside. Mark this moment, not for anyone else, but for yourself. Comment 777 below if you are choosing silence with direction, clarity without explanation, and peace without permission. Stay connected if you want to keep walking this shift with understanding and support. You don't have to navigate this transition alone. You were not silent by accident. You were not attacked by coincidence. And this season is where your authority stops being questioned, even when you say nothing at all.